Hey everyone, I'm Rafi Salem here with MX Data and the retail smart guys, Dan Jablons, Amaru Bustamante, and Xavier Degryse. Thank you, gentlemen, all for joining us today. I'd love for you to introduce yourselves. So, Amaru and Xavier, you guys fight it out. Who's going to start first?
Okay, well, I'll start. Well, I'm Xavier Degryse, and I'm the founder and CEO of MX Data, which MX Data is a company that we created like 30 plus years ago, and we've been focusing mainly on small and large retailers, international retail, and most of the retailers, the clients that we deal with are actually handling luxury retail. So that's what we've been doing for, as I said, 30 plus years, and we keep doing it. We keep working at it, and we stay excited by the various technologies that are coming up on the monthly and daily basis and yearly basis, and we're trying to always bring this type of technology and the new tools to you, our clients, and we hope that we do a good job for you, and we are very excited to work with you in general.
Great, Amaru, you're up.
Hey everybody, my name is Amaru Bustamante. I'm the COO of MX Data. I joined Xavier and the MX Data team back in circa 2001. Before that, I was on the retail side of the aisle, working in various capacities as an IT manager, an operations director, and I've held many positions in retail, all the way from working in the stockroom, in the warehouses, as a cashier, as a salesperson, as an assistant manager within the store, managing departments and things like that. So happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
All right, Dan, take it away.
So my name is Dan Jablons. My company is Retail Smart Guys, and we have been in the world of merchandise planning and open to buy for the past 15 years. Before that, I worked closely in the point of sale industry, which is how I know both Amaru and Xavier. Actually, I met you, Amaru, when you were actually first starting in this thing, and you were actually in the stockroom, like you mentioned. That's how that started. And Xavier and I had met when we were both working on a particular client together. Xavier, you might remember in those days, we were selling computers with 20 megabyte hard drives, thinking we were doing the most cutting edge technology there was in the universe, right?
I do remember, and I do remember as well that when I was ordering equipment for my clients, I used to go to 47th Street Photo, which is a very, old store. I'm not sure if it still exists in New York, but it was on 47th Street. And I used to carry a hand truck with me. And I was, by this type of weather, which is very hot and humid, I was sweating and carrying my computers to my clients, and they would laugh when they would see me arrive completely drenched in sweat. And that was the beginning of MX Data.
That's right. And the computers that we installed in those days, if your phone was that technology, you'd throw it away right now, right? So
of course, yeah.
So there you go. It's a whole different world. But Retail Smart Guys' main function is to help retailers properly forecast their sales and then give them an inventory plan that accompanies that enables them to hit that sales forecast without underbuying and missing sales, or overbuying and tying up cash unnecessarily. And thrilled to be here with my friends from MX Data.
Thank you, everyone. And it's so funny that you guys bring that up. I hadn't even thought about bringing this up. I ran one of the first e-commerce stores in the 90s. And wow. I remember packing up. I had about 20 boxes that I personally was wrapping up, shipping up. And my office mate said to me, Rafi, what are you doing? Like, why don't you have someone else build it up, package everything and label everything and do everything? And I was saying, well, how am I going to know every single process, every single part of the way of the process of e-commerce if I don't do it myself? If I just hire this out, how am I going to know it? And perfect segue into our first topic is Jeff Bezos said the same exact thing when he was selling books in the 90s. He was at the tables and he was actually packaging it up. So if you all recall, July 12 and 13 this year, one day turned into a 48-hour day called Amazon Prime Day. So first question of today is, how has Amazon Prime Day affected retailers, local and national?
Well, I'll take the first stab if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Just from our perspective, what I could tell you, what I see is that number one, Amazon many years ago proved out the use case, right? So it proved that e-commerce is a viable business. Number one. Number two, it proved that it could scale and that it didn't have to be, what we called what was Web 1.0 in terms of having e-commerce was literally just basically like having a phone catalog, right? You had a copy, you had a website, and you had maybe an email address or a phone number that somebody could call to talk to somebody to place some orders. That later evolved into being able to place the orders electronically through the website. And then, as you said, Rafi, having the ability to then integrate that into your supply chain and being able to have not just one warehouse or one person in a garage, but having a whole channel of different distribution centers be eligible to fulfill orders. And so for you or me as consumers, we take it for granted, but it's magic, right? Like you or I will go to a website like Amazon and we'll place orders, and we just take it for granted that somebody somewhere in the world is gonna put this stuff that I placed an order on in the comfort of wherever I am, and it's gonna find its way to me. And most of the time, if not maybe 90 plus 99% of the time, it does, right? And it's completely transparent to us, that process. But for the retailers and for the suppliers who are making that happen, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Part of that being how they manage their inventory, how they manage demand that's coming in from those, because that's a whole new channel that's coming in, is people ordering from their phones and their devices, wherever they may be. So for me, that's one way that Amazon really impacted retailers and proving that they can, that they not only they can, but they should treat digital and e-commerce as real retail channels and venues and real ways to connect for brands to connect with their customers. And of course, there's other stuff like social media that we can get into. But Dan, I'll let you take over from there.
Here's the thing we've seen about Amazon. Obviously, through the years, I've heard many of my retail clients complain about people coming into the store, looking at something, then scanning the barcode, looking for it on Amazon and trying to get it that way, right? And even though there is some of that, certainly in the fashion business, Amazon still has not had that much success there. Fashion retailing is still held by the luxury retailers that do that fashion thing, and I don't know that Amazon will ever get there, as much as they talk about it and want to try to be there and that kind of thing. At the end of the day, Amazon is like buying stuff off of a catalog, and there's no question about that. And so for most of our retailers that are trying to figure out, like, okay, well, Amazon is doing this and that, what do we do? There's really two answers. One is not fight it, not put a lot of time, sweating all that, because, you're not going to compete with, unless you have the kind of money that Jeff Bezos has, you're not going to compete there. But I think the way to compete against that is just to be that store that provides that level of service that you can't get from an Amazon, and we've had plenty of customers who have had someone be in the store, scan a barcode and go, well, I can get it on Amazon. And then the retailer says, yeah, but you can have it right now. Put it in their hands right now and go. So you can, it'll ship to you and you might get it 2-3 days, and it might be good. It might not, might be, who knows what the box is going to look like. Is it going to get stolen from your doorstep? There are lots of ins and outs of the Amazon world, right? We've all seen enough Facebook videos of, like, the guy snags the thing off the doorstep and that kind of thing.
Or is there going to be like a drone helicoptering over my lawn and dropping something on my head?
And here's the other thing about it too. I have a menswear store in Florida, and I say to him sometimes, I say, so why do people come to you versus going to anywhere else or buying it online? He said, because a man who walks into my store knows that when he walks out, he's not going to look like he's wearing a sack of potatoes, that he's going to be wearing the right things, that it's going to fit him well, that we've picked looks and designs for him that make sense for him. And I think that's an important that's an important facet, especially in luxury retail, by the way. But it's true of all fashion retail, which is that part of the reason why people go to those stores is they also want the input and the expertise of the people that are there, and they're not going to get that from an Amazon.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you nailed it very well when you said that for the fashion industry, the Amazon type of a business or the online business is not anywhere near what it can be for accessories, maybe, or things like this. The problem that you have with apparel in general is, as you very well described it, you can see a very nice looking picture of a dress or of a pants, but when you actually receive it and put it on, that's why they have changing room in the stores. You don't have a changing room, at least as of yet. A virtual changing room might be coming soon, but you don't have anything to try on what you're buying. And many times, whether it's for shoes, whether it's for pants, whether it's for dresses or anything that you need to put on, when you receive the goods, you realize that the picture was taken in a certain way, which was not really making justice or was giving too much credit to the item that you're buying, and you end up returning it. So when you factor in the time you spent to order the items, the time you spend to get it and try it on and realize that it's not working, and then you need to ship it back it can be, sometimes pretty frustrating. The
other part of it too is that as you guys all know from working with fashion retailers, a size 27 pair of denim is not the same everywhere, right? There's different rises, there's different, and also no matter what the picture looks like, it does not necessarily do justice to the fabrication of it, right? And sometimes an Amazon buyer is focused on price and doesn't understand there's some workmanship to that, there's some fabric choices to that kind of thing. So the Amazon is great for things like toilet paper and that kind of stuff that you want to hoard during pandemics and things like that. But when you're talking about fashion, or you're talking about something that's a bit more of a technical sale, a bit more of a detailed sale, getting the on-site advice from the brick and mortar retailer is just irreplaceable.
I agree.
So one thing I agree with you guys, but maybe with a caveat, which is that, companies like Amazon, they're aware of this kind of anecdotal evidence or feeling that we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And that's friction in terms of how to get the product and how to overcome that. How to overcome the consumer's fear that they're going to order something that doesn't fit or doesn't look or feel, for whatever reason they don't want it. And so companies like Amazon, and Amazon in particular, have try before you buy, right? So they'll literally ship you product for free, and what do they tell you? They said, look, you keep what you want, pay for what you want, send it back free if you don't want it. You can send everything back. You have no hook, no obligation. So that said, coming back to your point, Dan, not everybody can afford to do that, right? Not everybody can afford to take on the cost. So the point is, if I'm a local business, I'm not necessarily going to try to compete with Amazon on, that kind of economy of scale that they have that gives them the ability to basically be shipping things out for free. I mean, it's well known that, like, for example, their Kindle devices and their Echo devices they're basically giving them away. When you look at their cost infrastructure, they're probably losing money when they sell these things, but for them, the game is not the price of the product up front. It's the customer retention and the subscriptions that they get from all of those things. So coming back to a retailer, this is where I think companies like Amazon, again, come more to prove the case. So if I'm a retailer, I say, okay, well, maybe I don't have that, but to your point, with my local consumers, right, those are people who come in, but now now that they've established some kind of brand loyalty, or at least they're aware of me as a business, as you said, they know that they can trust me as a brand. Well, then I give them now the alternative of not just shopping with me online. So maybe they don't. So they came into the store, they know that, this pair of jeans from this brand fits me. Now I have the option, if you give it to me, I have the option to go to your website and buy it from you. Yeah. Or you as a retailer can make your product available through Amazon if you really want to. So my point, to your point, it's not just zero-sum game anymore. You don't just have to, try to compete with Amazon, because, as you said, I mean, at this point, chances are that's not a game you're going to win.
I think service is the way to go. Plus, also think about this for a minute. Even if you're going to play the game of, okay, ship it to me. If it's not right, I'll ship it back. You'll ship me another one. That's not right. You ship me that. Ship me another one. As opposed to first time I go to the store, I get what I want. It looks good on me.
Yeah, you froze on us, Dan.
We lost you.
All right. Well, Dan, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. But yeah, I got your point. We're talking about an analog world, right? Like something that's tactile. There's,
I think
there's
Jeff Bezos was monitoring
A
our
guy
call
who's
and
biding their
just
time. They're smart,
curious.
fashion-oriented people.
Yeah. So by the way, Dan, you cut out for
No,
about 30
too bad. It
seconds
was
or
the
so.
most clever
I-
thing I've ever said. But,
it was
Now
it-
no one's ever going to hear that.
yeah, my dog heard it, so it's
I'm
okay.
sure you repeat it later.
Let's definitely move on to the next. We'd love to continue the conversation, but we got to move on. So moving on, what is happening today? What is trending? And the answer is, who wants to take it? What is happening right now in this country?
Well, certainly a lot of our retailers have seen a little bit of a slowdown because of inflation, and there's some, inflation combined with, wackiness in the news, and there's some rising COVID numbers, and if that wasn't enough, would you like a little monkeypox? Here in LA, we talk a lot about monkeypox. So, there's a million reasons why these things don't work, but in all of that, I would tell you that there is only one solution to this, and I learned it when I started Retail Smart Guys. It was right when the recession started. Like, I had actually left a salaried job to start my own business, and then 3 months later, Saks went 75% off, and I thought, I'll be homeless in about 6-8 weeks. It'll be over, So the thing that I learned in that time, and the thing that we're seeing now more than ever, is that the answer to it always is to turn faster. If you can get the right inventory turn, or even a half turn, or a single turn faster than you're turning today, it means you're going to be less in inventory and more in cash. And that's going to be the recipe that gets people through any trouble that they think might happen in the last half of this year or the beginning of 2023. And of course, you need to have the right tools to do that. You need to be able to measure all that. But, you've got to look at what you're turning at right now and figure out, how can I turn a half turn faster or a whole turn faster? I mean, the dollars of that, it just seems like, a half turn doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're doing $1 million and you're a fashion retailer, it's anywhere from, by doing that, you could put anywhere from $40,000 to $85,000 worth of cash in your pocket. What does that cash mean? It means I can hire someone I maybe couldn't hire before. It means I can upgrade my systems. It means I can do more marketing. It means there's a million things I can do with that cash that will continue to propel my business moving forward. And so when you start to wonder, like, well, I want to do these things in my store, but I don't know how I'm going to do it, the answer is to turn faster.
Yeah. So who, in your experience, Dan, who do you think in the retailer's organization is best situated to impact that? So, are we talking about accountants, bookkeepers? Are we talking about, CEOs? Are we talking about buyers, merchandisers, store managers? Like, who do you think is best situated?
It's the buyer, because the buyer, if they're using a proper plan, has planned out what they're going to sell, but also what their inventory should be. And probably most important, if not, well, I'm sure most important, where are they going to end the season? If you and I both have stores, and I end the season with $20,000 worth of goods, and you end the season with $10,000 worth of goods, you win. You've gotten your cash out of it, and you're going to have to take less markdowns to get the goods out, which means your customer knows to buy that. They're going to have to move fast and get full price goods out of you, versus me. They might wait till I go on sale, right? So the longevity of the business is really based on that too.
So you just mentioned something interesting to me. You said, you talked about it in terms of dollars. So what's the play between dollars and units in this case when you're planning?
Well, the unit thing has changed certainly a little bit because, prices are going up because of inflation, right? But, we always look in dollars because it's what drives, planning and merchandise planning, really, at the end of the day, when it started, when we were all younger men, listening to all of us tell our histories before this, I'm like, oh my God, I know Xavier for 30 some odd years now. Like, I can't even believe it. Anyway, open to buy, when it actually began in the 70s in the department store world, before it actually got down into the level of independent retail where it is today, was created because the financial people said, listen, it's great these buyers are buying things, but when am I going to get my money out? right?
Right.
And so they created this whole thing just so that the financial people could see, oh, if I invest in this stuff at this point in time, by this month, I should get my cash out of it and be prepared to move on to the next thing. So we think of it that way because it's an elaborate cash flow plan at the end of the day. Some people like to do it in units, but the problem with doing it in units is you don't really think about things like, well, how much am I going to have to mark down? What's the cost of the markdown? And how does that markdown's cost affect my profitability?
Well,
Right.
I think that one of the things that you can add to this, Dan, is the fact that you spoke about the buyers and the merchandisers. For me, the merchandisers are the guys who are going to discuss with the executives of the company the type of items and the trends that they're going to try to follow because they want to follow the market. Then the buyers are more in tune with the accounting guys who wants to get their money out at some point and get a return on investment. And they need to make the link between what the merchandisers want and the finance people want, because
Right.
the buyer is the guy who's going to actually spend the dollar amount in the inventory, but they need to spend it wisely to make sure that they follow what the merchandisers are have in mind for the next season.
And the other thing that both of those groups need to pay more attention to, which is hard to get them to focus on this, but one of the things that we spend a lot of time looking at is, as buyers and as merchandisers, they're always looking ahead. What's the next trend? What's the next color story? What's the next fabric story? That kind of stuff. But one of my stores, they require the buyers and the merchandisers, preferably monthly, but at least every other month, they have to do the tour of shame in the warehouse, where they have to walk the warehouse and look at what's still there, right? What did you buy that we're not out of yet? And what's the plan to do that? And what lesson did we learn so that we don't do that again, right?
That's one way to keep people accountable.
Yeah, it's a hugely important thing, right? So the buyers have to walk through there and go, "Ooh, look, yeah, I bought."
They see the real world impact.
Yeah.
So,
and there is no such thing as a perfect buyer, right? So there isn't going to be anybody that's going to be like, oh, I bought it and it had a 75% sell through in the first 30 days.
Well,
You know what I mean?
that's when the buyer blames the merchandiser. They say, "You told me to buy that."
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
so I
that's
had
right.
a couple other questions come to mind. Question and comment. So when we're looking at dollars, what basis are we talking about? Are we talking about, like, when you say the inventory on hand, for example? Are you talking about how much? Are you looking at it? How much do I have at hand on my cost basis, at my retail basis, at my profit margin? What do you think is important for retailers to look at?
I usually start by looking at it at the retail level, whatever retail level it's at, and the reason is that's my prediction of what income I can make. Right? I can't. We're not a salon where it's like, okay, I can make more money if 10 more people walk in. As a store, the only way you can predict what your income is going to be is to predict what your inventory is going to be. So you've got to be able to look at that.
Well, the other thing which is very important is, personally, most of the retailers that I've met, when they do open to buy, they always do it at retail, because the point is, when you predict or when you plan something at retail, you're using the market price. It's your
projected revenue.
You're not planning at cost, because the cost doesn't mean anything for the market. So you want to make sure that you're in phase with the market when you're predicting your plan.
That's very well said, and that's exactly correct. You can't predict income, but also you've got to be able to look at it and go like, okay, well, this is what the market will pay for these things. It's amazing how sometimes, back to that tour of shame thing, there's sometimes I've had to tell buyers, listen, you know what? Whatever you paid for, it doesn't matter. It's what the customer values it at, which means at some point, if they don't value it anymore, you're going to have to slash and burn and get whatever money you can out of it so that you can reinvest that in what is selling.
Right. That reminds me of a cliche that, anything is only worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it.
That's correct.
So that brings me to, sorry, Rafi, before you switch topics, because I know the trigger topic here was talking about inflation, and Dan, you talked about basically one of the best ways to combat inflation for retailers to really focus on their inventory turn. And then we talked about trends and things like that. And so, one of the things that I think that's interesting is, so how does a retailer, come to these decisions, right? We talked about, merchandising and making buying decisions. And so, what information is available to these businesses to make these decisions? So I would say that the typical retailer, the low-hanging fruit that they have is their own data, right? Their own data and their own history. And that's great. So number one, if I'm a retailer, at minimum, I'm talking about bare minimum, I need to be able to get at my own data right? So I need to be able to look at my data. I need to be able to report on it. I need to be able to look at it historically, right? Because if I want to start looking at trends or how I'm doing, it's not necessarily just looking at it, how did I do this past week or month or year even. I might need to do some comparisons of like, this year versus last, or this same period versus that period, and so on and so forth. Things like thinking about things like days of supply and what, obviously, if you're heading into a holiday season, like let's say like a Christmas season, your chances are that your days of supply calculation should be a little different than if you're looking at the middle of summer,
Right.
And so on and so forth. So number one, I think where a company like MX Data comes in is helping retailers implement those systems that will get them at that, give them the ability to, number one, capture that data and capture it at a level that's meaningful and useful to a buyer, right? Because that's the other thing is, there's information that's presented to a consumer, but then there's how do I, as somebody who's analyzing my data, want and need to be able to dissect that so that it's meaningful and useful for me to then convert that into these buying decisions. So that's number one. Number two, though, or maybe I missed another point, but going back to something that I think you and people like you focus on is, so yeah, it's great to be able to look at your own history, but wouldn't it also be interesting to compare my data against a larger data set? So how are my competitors doing, right? How are the people who are selling the kinds of products that I sell doing? Not maybe, and then be able to dissect that, by region. And one of the things we talked about, is buying is it's topical, it's seasonal, somebody's global climate disaster is Home Depot and Lowe's, boon. And so, and people who are making sandals, hey, people, listen, one of the things I think it's interesting is, how COVID has affected everything, and we saw spikes in things that maybe nobody would have predicted. Pools, inflatable pools went through the roof, out of stock. Bicycles, home exercise equipment,
Athletic footwear, yeah.
All of these things that maybe nobody would have thought of ahead of time. Why would that even come up? But it did. More things that made sense were over the counter supplies like medicines and toilet paper, tissue paper. Even that almost seemed illogical. But in any case, so when you're working with people and getting them to look at data, are you really just having them focus on their own historical trends?
Yeah.
Or is there a way that you help them look at the larger trends in the market and their competitors?
Both. I mean, the first thing obviously is to be able to say, this is what your turns have been, right? And then, so when you think about turns, right, you've got to think about, okay, where have your turns been? And then what should they be for your industry? Now, there are certain industries, like in the footwear industry, where there are member organizations that publish what turn rates typically are, or will publish, footwear does it, the surf industry does it, that kind of thing, right? So, and then what's interesting is where usually we get people to wake up and see what this is about is like, okay, so if I got you to turn a half turn faster or a single turn faster, how many dollars does that put in your pocket? Right. And you do that again by not only forecasting your sales, which most people do to a degree, but not even well. A lot of people forecast their sales by just going, well, this is what I think I'm going to do in this fiscal year, not forecasting by location, by month, by category, which is the right way to do it. Right. But then you also, if you forecast that inventory and you say, okay, well, what should my inventory be if I want to go from a 2.5 turn to a 3 turn, or a 2.5 turn to a 3.5 turn? What does that look like? What does my inventory need to be? And that backs into a buying plan and an assortment plan that takes you from good retailing to great retailing. Now, I work with a company called Management One. We have the largest independent retail database on the planet. So we know what turns should be in every industry. And we know what the industry averages are, so we can help our customers go, you're turning here, but your industry is there and you should be doing better. And by the way, sometimes you can turn too fast and sometimes you have to slow them down because they may be out of the goods before anybody gets a chance to see them, right? So
and that's what we saw in COVID is empty shelves.
Yeah, for sure. And the supply chain thing has been crazy. It's gotten a lot better now, the supply chain thing, but it's been pretty crazy. So, but what people did learn in COVID was, I've been for years barking about how you can turn faster, and people kind of roll their eyes and look at me, that kind of stuff. And then I had a lot of people that just went, you know what? I'm turning a whole turn faster. I have more money in the bank now than I've ever had. And I'm like, see? Anyway,
and to that point, because you've both mentioned COVID before, is COVID still a factor? Very quick point, and then we're going to wrap things up.
So, I'd say that yes, it is. This is the short answer. The longer answer is we're pretending like it's not. I think there's two things. Is COVID a factor from a psychological perspective for the average consumer? I think at the moment it's maybe not. I think what we're seeing is that a lot of people are the behavior is inconsistent with the reality. The reality, is that we're seeing that COVID. The reality is that COVID as a health concern is still very real, and there's still the potential for the kinds of outbreaks that we were seeing, a year or 2 years ago, still happen. The good news is, it hasn't. We're not back at that kind of same emergency state, but the potential is there. So it's something that's lingering for sure. So I think, and then we always see in the news, these notions about new variants. I think the new one is BA.5. Literally just before this call, I got a news alert that President Biden has tested positive for COVID.
That's right. Today he tested positive.
One thing that I would add, Amaru, because you're saying that COVID still has an impact, and I think it does definitely still have an impact. But we focused mainly today on talking about the customers of the retailers. But if you look at the employees of the retailers as well, or the employees of businesses in general, COVID had a tremendous impact on that, because already you can read left and right in the press that many employees nowadays still want to work remote. Many employees don't want to come back to work, or not under the same conditions than the one they were dealing with before. And the retail industry has not been spared by that. And
so there's less foot traffic.
It also means you can't do the kind of big doorbuster sale that you might have done in the past, because you can't put a whole crowd of people in there. I actually have this great little cartoon that someone sent me, which they said, my housekeeper called and said she's going to be working from home. I think now we have to be a bit cautious about that. There is almost a myopia about it, like it happened in the past, not happening now, and I have a little cough.
So where I see the opportunity here is, and this actually kind of ties neatly back, I think, to the very beginning of this call, which is, we started to talk about Amazon, and I said, that I think it proves the use case. So, what happened over the last 2 years? Traditionally, brick and mortar retailers, physical retailers, what I call physical first retailers, were essentially forced to either invest in or heavily ramp up their digital retail footprint, right? Their ability to meet the customer where they are. Where are the customers? The customers are online. They're on their phones. I have kids. I have teenagers. My teenagers like to go to the mall and all of that, and to go shopping, and they're just as comfortable, if not more likely, to shop from their phones, literally shopping on Instagram or going to, sites. And so where I think there's an opportunity, and where I think this fits neatly also with, the type of stuff that you're talking about, Dan, is, where you sell, regardless of where you sell, the concepts, the fundamentals, the principles of managing inventory still apply. So as a retailer now, where maybe you were focused on, selling at one store or 10 stores or 100 stores, well, another consumer facing channel is the web, right? It's your website, it's Amazon, it's wherever your customers are. So I think retailers, I think COVID already did in these past 2 years. And I think it's permanently changed the behavior of consumers, is what I call the COVID consumer. We're in the age of the COVID consumer. The COVID consumer is now is much more comfortable and confident shopping online. Maybe not to 100% to the degree that they would be physical, the way, for example, Dan and Xavier talked about earlier, but it's getting pretty close.
They still expect to be able to buy online, return in store. They need to buy online, pick up at curb. They expect the retailer to be flexible in terms of all those different places, and we have to be able to look at that data, prepare the inventory, and prepare the stores to be able to function in that new paradigm.
Right. Yeah. And so demand is demand and supply is supply. So I think, Dan, like what you do is you focus really on those two aspects, right? What's the demand and what's the supply? And
how do I put the right supply there to make it happen and still cash flow?
Right. And again, whether that's, your store in New York, California, the middle of the country somewhere or online, I mean, those are all valid conversations to have.
To close on the things, because you very rightly so told Dan what Dan's focus is. I would say that, to close this argument, and what I think the COVID did, and especially when the retailers in general, had to focus on digital commerce as opposed to brick and mortar one, that also made them aware of something of a reality, which, and Amaru started to explain that at the beginning. He says, well, this is kind of magical when you think that you place an order online and somewhere someone is picking up these orders and fulfilling it and shipping it to you, and it's magic, and it's totally transparent to the retailers, to the consumer. What I think we've noticed, especially during the COVID the COVID period, is the fact that retailers who were converting their brick and mortar stores to digital business, digital commerce, they realized that the problem is not only having a nice front end, a nice website, a nice looking website. The problem only starts once you made the sale online and the people, the shopping cart has done its job. What happened next? And there is a huge disconnect between what happens when you're online and you're shopping and what you need as a retailer to do from a logistical point of view to fulfill the orders. And I think that's where MXD focused mainly in the last few years, in the COVID years, to help the retailers fill that gap.
An e-commerce business typically turns faster than a brick and mortar business does, by the way, right? They don't have to maintain the same level of inventory and that kind of thing. So they should turn faster. So when we plan people that have both brick and mortar and e-commerce, we have to plan those two different businesses at two different turn rates because they work differently. And retailers have to be prepared to pivot between both of those. And having the right inventory is going to be, the guy who's got the right inventory is going to win that game every single time. Retailers spend more money on inventory than anything else, than on technology, than on personnel, than on rent, than on marketing, anything. And so curating and manicuring that assortment by using the tools that we're talking about here is going to be what ensures the retailer's future, not only now while we're finding the COVID, whatever condition it's in, or inflation, but well into the future. And those habits are ones that are going to make successful change no matter what happens economically.
Well, let's put it that way. Let's put it that way. If you spend more time on your rent than on your inventory, that means you have a problem.
Well, actually, you just said something. I wanted to close on that. Dan and Xavier, it's not just for the retailer, the cost to procure the inventory in the first place is one thing, but when you purchase something, a physical object that we're talking about, it costs them money to store and maintain that stuff, to warehouse and inventory it. So the longer that they have products sitting on their shelves, the more they're paying, and the more they're paying for dead product. I mean, that's another expense for the retailer. So,
and I'll just say this one last thing, because I know Rafi is so dying to wrap it up. But the other thing that we've seen to be a tremendous success for retailers, and it ties back to the turn thing, is that fresh goods are what sell at retail, right? If your customer comes to your store this month, sees what you saw last month, she's not coming next month, which means that to the degree that you get fresh goods in there all the time is to the degree you're going to turn faster and be more successful.
So I wanted to thank you all for this very lively discussion. Who knew retail was so exciting? Well, we all did.
Yeah, we all did. Yeah.
We all did. So Dan, how can people contact you and any upcoming events, conferences?
Sure, a couple things. So I'll give you my email is dan@retailsmartguys.com. I am very, very good at answering emails, as you all know. I don't go to sleep at night unless my inbox is empty, much to the chagrin of my wife. But there you go. Or they can call my cell, 818-720-2585. In about 2 weeks, in the beginning of August, I'll be speaking at the IR show in San Diego, which is a footwear show. I'm speaking then at Super Zoo. I'm also speaking at and Global Pet. I speak at both the pet shows. Surf Expo in September, and the toy show in February. The toy fair, I think, in Vegas. And there's a couple others that are not confirmed yet. But if you check our website, retailsmartguys.com, you'll see it all there.
Fantastic. Amaru, Xavier, any upcoming events?
We don't have any specific events coming up per se, but we do regularly like to send updates out to our customers. So if anybody's interested in speaking with us, they can visit our website, www.mxdata.com. Also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and something else I'm forgetting, I'm sure. But we're on YouTube. So if you want to see more of us, you can check us out on YouTube as well to see some of the other
You guys
videos
aren't
and
dancing
recordings
on
that we do.
TikTok? Little TikTok
Listen,
action going there?
that's my personal channel. That's
Oh,
my
I see. Okay. All right. Good to know.
You'll need to send me a private request for that one, Dan.
Yeah. Okay.
But it'll be
Well,
worth your time.
It's either TikTok or the OnlyFans platform.
There you go.
Hey. I don't know what you're talking about, Xavier.
All right.
Well, it's
Very
not
good.
only what we think.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
and
Rafi.
we will see you
Thank
next
you.
time. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.